I think we have to hold things lightly. I started using neurodivergent, neurodiversity in the last couple of years because it's become kind of a hot topic and a hot button issue. But Neurospicy kind of gave me permission to remind us all it's all part of it and it's okay and there's nothing broken here. One of the reasons I love coaching as a modality for supporting people with neurodiversity is that.
Hey there, Lyssa deHart here, and welcome to the Coaching Studio, the podcast that dives deep with the brightest minds in coaching, psychology, organizational leadership, and the art of working with people. You'll hear intimate, thought-provoking conversations alongside rising and established voices shaping the future of human development. Expect real stories, bold ideas, and practical insights you can use to expand your coaching and leadership impact. Whether you're a coach, therapist, leader, or lifelong learner, you'll leave each episode with new insights and renewed inspiration. Let's go. Hello, Lyssa here, and welcome to the studio. For many people, parenting can be easy. They got a really easy kid to work with. But for other parents, they can be left asking, why does this feel so hard? For many families, raising complex kids every day can feel like a battle. There's frustration, isolation, and a general misunderstanding of what even is going on in their family. It can leave parents feeling like they're failing. And my guest today, Elaine Taylor-Klaus, knows this story firsthand. First in the trenches, raising her own complex kids, and also from her own specific experience of being a neurospicy person and understanding and developing an understanding of her own wiring. And what she discovered was a new way forward. Coaching wasn't just a profession for her, it was a lifeline that helped her reimagine parenting and restore connection and create hope where it had felt impossible. She is the co-founder of ImpactParents and the author of The Essential Guide to Raising Complex Kids. And she has turned a journey into a mission. She is teaching parents, educators, and coaches how to ask different questions to move from what is wrong with them and why do they act like that to what is happening here and how can we support them. So who is Elaine Taylor-Klaus? We're going to find out and see what she has to teach us about people you cannot keep in a box. Welcome to the show, Elaine. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you, Lyssa. That was a beautiful introduction. I'm honored and I'm excited for the conversation.
I am really excited for the conversation as well. So I gave a little preamble about who you are now, but I would love to have a sense of what led you to who you are now. What were some of those important moments that brought you here?
I was a hot mess, and truly, I was talking to one of my kids about it the other day, actually, because my kids are now young adults, and it's so fun. We're having so much fun sharing all the stuff that we couldn't share with each other years ago. I was a mom in an ADHD plus because ADHD travels with a lot of cousins. Family of 5, and but I didn't know it, and we didn't. Our kids started getting diagnosed one by one, kind of like dominoes. And at some point, and my husband was diagnosed, and at some point I looked at my kids and I said, there's no way that he could be responsible for all of this neurology. And so I, like you, as an adult, went through a full psych ed evaluation, was evaluated, and was diagnosed in my 40s with both learning and attention issues. So I have this kind of line of demarcation. There was me before diagnosis and me after diagnosis. And diagnosis was quickly followed by coaching. So it's really me before and after. And before, I was kind of a hot mess. I was really neurotic. I was very anxious as a mother. I had one of my kids in particular had very complex kids, and there just wasn't a lot of support in those days for parents. There was a lot of support for the kids themselves, but there was virtually nothing for parents, unless you could drive across town at 7:30 on a Tuesday night and happen to make it to some support group, right? Like that was back in the day. And I was just lost. I mean, we have these avatars we play with at Impact, and I was lost Lois and maxed out Maxine.
Mm.
And I I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing that experts were telling me to do. And to the outside world, it might have even looked like I had it together, but inside the house, it kind of felt like a house of cards, and things were just not flowing the way they should. My kids weren't hitting milestones that they should, and that I felt like I needed them to. Um, and I was really having a hard time because it wasn't, those sepia tone Kodak commercials that my
Yeah.
life was supposed to be wasn't playing out that way, and I was struggling.
I think there's something there too about when, I don't know, the kind of the expected image of what it's supposed to look like is like
Yeah.
out of focus with what you're experiencing. It can be isolating, frustrating. You don't have those Kodak moments that you feel like sharing. How did coaching come into your life? Because you said it was sort of like before coaching and then after coaching. How did that happen?
Well, there were kind of a couple of changes that happened very close to each other. The first change was actually nutritional. One of my kids had so many diagnoses. I went to the therapist and I said, "Where do I start?" She said, "You start with the metabolic," and she sent us to a nutritionist. And long story short, many people in my family have been off of gluten for now 20 something years, which was way ahead of what we now see in the world. So there was no gluten-free food and no gluten-free menus. And so that was a pretty major transition point for us. And I actually tried to go to nutrition school for a minute. So I'm a nutrition school dropout because I discovered pretty early that was not my area of expertise. But as a parent who was struggling, I was trying to deal with it by figuring out how to help other parents, because I figured if I could help them, I guess I could help me. And that's my way of being in the world. I'm a see a need, fill a need kind of a person. And so the long story short is that I was on my way to actually go back to graduate school. I was trying to get a PhD. The reason I got evaluated was so I could take the GREs as an adult, because I thought I might need accommodations. And I couldn't find a program that met my schedule with 3 small children.
Mhm.
And so a colleague, somebody, a provider said, "You should really check out coaching. You should." And she was very prescriptive for me. She's like, "This is the coaching school you should go to. And then you should get an ADHD certification, and then you'll have that. And that will be what you." And I took her advice as what I thought was a stopgap measure, as a temporary solution until I could become a therapist. And, and I went to my first coach training. And I called my husband from the middle of the first afternoon in tears. And I said, "I found it. This is it." It was because it was everything I wanted in a modality. It was empowerment based. It was strength based. It was process based. It didn't require me to remember a lot of stuff. I could be present with people to where they were right then. It was meeting people where they are. It was everything I had always been about, as in all of the previous jobs I had done and the work I had done as an advocate, I was a pregnancy and postpartum yoga teacher. Like, everything kind of led to it. So when I discovered coaching, I kind of dove in, and it didn't take long for me to become a much better parent as a result.
Mm.
And I started chilling out and stopped being so anxious. And that was part of the process, that and a diagnosis and beginning to treat my ADHD, um, made this huge difference, because I was able to stop being attached to what everybody else's expectations were, to your point, and to start being thoughtful about what my expectations were and what was fair and reasonable and appropriate, for where I was, not where I thought I should be. You know?
Yeah, I love that, and I think it's fascinating too. I mean, you described that sort of, I think I found my calling, experience that you had. I remember when I took my own assessments for a similar reason as you. Although I had already been to graduate school, I managed to find went to a graduate school that didn't require a GRE.
Nice.
Because I was in state, or I don't know why the reason was, but they didn't require one where I went to my graduate program. So I was like, yes, that'll be at work. But I was going to take the LSAT again because I was like, I want to be an attorney instead of a therapist. And then I keep changing my mind on that. But that led to that getting a whole battery of exams done to find out what was going on. And I mean, for you as an adult, getting this thing assessed and then finding out that you're ADHD plus plus, how did that also shift the way you were sort of observing the world and your children around you?
It had changed everything. I mean, the first thing I did when I got the diagnosis is as I was driving home, I called my mom and I said, "Hey, Mom, guess what we've got?"
What we've got, I love it.
My dad wasn't very thrilled with me, but my mom figured it out and later got treatment for it. But um, the first few months, I think I cried a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to mourn the loss of the life I had, the things that I had missed, the missed opportunities in my life. I majored in something I didn't like. I pursued a career I didn't particularly like. I I leaned into things where I could be successful because I didn't understand what it took to be successful in other things.
Mm-hmm.
And so first I think I mourned and I cried a lot. And then I started getting a handle on it. And then I started figuring out what it took to manage it and how it showed up for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I started writing. That's about the time I started writing, which was huge for me because even though I have a learning disability, um, a language processing learning disability, I love to write, and writing is kind of my therapy. And so I started writing. The first article I ever wrote was, "Why can't I put myself to bed?" And because it's really hard for people with ADD to get sleep a lot.
Yeah.
And I really struggled. I got very lucky. I found somebody. I was writing for a medical content site, so I had an editor who guided me in those early years and really kind of taught me. And what I was doing initially was kind of applying the coach approach to any kind of, how do you use the coach approach to whatever medical condition they were writing about or presenting on. And so I got a little support and some training in it, which helped a lot. But really what happened was it started shifting the way I was being. And when I started shifting the way I was being, started to shift the relationships around me, mostly for the better, not
Not
funny.
100%.
Yeah.
But
But everybody started responding to me differently, and I was able to take a more empowering approach to parenting. And so it began to really shift the dynamic there.
excuse the interruption, Lyssa here. I would like to ask something from you. If you like this channel and you like the content that I'm offering, please do a simple, easy thing for me, which is subscribe to the channel. And on that note, let's get back to the show. That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think I really resonate with the morning. I think it wasn't that I was so sad that I had dyslexia and ADHD. It was that I was sort of sad that, to your point, of the idea of myself and then the reality of myself. But I think there was also another piece for me, which was, oh my God, all of this struggle that I've been through in order to get to this point, I could have bypassed a lot of that if I had been able to. Yeah, what just happened there?
Yeah, no, I at some point after my freshman year of college, I never took a class again where I had to take a test.
How did you do that?
I went into a major where it was all about writing papers. And I didn't like it, but it was my path, right? In
Hmm.
hindsight, had I known, I could have gotten accommodations, I could have gotten a tutor, like I could have gotten the support I needed to major in, psych
Yeah.
soc or something that would have been a better fit for me.
Hmm.
And there were lots of things that I began to look back on my life and go, oh, that's why I did that. Like my whole life made perfect, crystal clear sense in the rearview mirror of that diagnosis.
Yeah, I definitely had an experience very similar to that where, and I managed to get through undergrad without taking math, other than just basic math that I had to
Yeah.
take. But like you, I ended up with a degree in photography and art history because I could write, and I could, and even though I couldn't spell, I could at least. The ideas were there. I had a really important instructor in my life who said to me, she pulled me into her office, she gave me my paper, which had, I don't remember what the grade was on it. I don't recall it being bad, but it wasn't great either. And she goes, let me just say something to you. You really need to like get help with your writing because your ideas are fabulous. Like you get it. I know you get it. It is though your communication of getting it is not as good as it could be. And I kind of look back on her as like one of those heroes in my life. Now I'd had editors before because my mom edited pretty much everything I ever wrote in my life. And my stepmother did also. And then I just always got editors until I got to college, and I guess I thought I didn't need them anymore. And we didn't have Grammarly yet, so I then ended up with this wonderful professor who was like, "You need support on that," and I really wanted to get better at it. So, kind of like you, I ended up getting the help and support I needed to be able to write, but I still didn't know why I struggled so much. Like grammar
Either.
is hilarious to me. Like, and my husband jokes that I just have a love affair with commas, and I think it's true. I do. I just don't know where to put anything else. So I'm like, take a breath. Um,
Yeah. Now I got the writing. The writing came easily, and I think part of it was I got a really good high school education around writing, so I was very well I was well set up for it, and so I found it was my path. Like I wrote an undergraduate thesis. I wrote my first book in college,
wow.
and in hindsight, that sounds crazy, but I reread it in the last couple of years. It's not that bad. I wouldn't publish it, but it's not that bad. But that was it was a path. So I had that dichotomy of, on the one hand, I was successful. I was at a very good school. I was in a strenuous program. I was doing well. On the other hand, I felt like a hot mess.
Hmm.
And, I couldn't always get it together. I had enough anxiety to stay organized, so I wasn't missing deadlines and failing. I was thriving, but there was always this kind of sense that at some point they're going to find me out.
Mm.
They're going to figure out I'm not smart enough to be here. I'm not like at some point they're going to figure it out. And so when I was finally diagnosed and I started learning and understanding all of those years of imposter syndrome and feeling dumb. I think that's the thing for me. I often say to parents that if you don't give kids an explanation for what they're struggling with, they're going to make up something a whole lot worse. And
Yeah.
typically they're going to make up that they're lazy, crazy, or stupid. And I had this story that I was really stupid, and at some point they were going to figure it out. And I think I was well into my 40s, maybe into my 50s, before I realized that wasn't actually true.
You know, it's so interesting as you're talking about this. It's sort of the memory, and I've said this to people because I work with a lot of people who have neurospicy wiring, and we'll get into neurospicy in a minute. But I definitely have said to them, if you ever had anybody say this to you, you're so smart. If you just tried a little harder, you would be able to figure this out. And you're laughing because I think that's like the common call to action that we've all had, who are people who are struggling with some sort of neurodiverse wiring in our brain. But what is,
Or the report card that says, well, so and so is just not quite living up to their potential.
that's
Right.
it
That's
again,
another
right?
language for it that shows up a lot. Yeah, you can, if when people get diagnosed as adult, you can go back to your childhood report cards, whatever your mom happened to save for you, and you'll see the narrative.
Hmm.
Even if you were successful, and I was a really successful student. Like, I want to be really clear. You don't have to be failing out to be diagnosed with neurodiversity. I was
Right.
very successful, and it came at a cost. because what helped me be successful was the underlying anxiety that compelled me,
Yeah. You kind of.
right, to just keep. So I just worked really, really hard, and I had this very difficult experience my freshman year of college. My roommate, who came from, I went to school in New England, and I'm from Atlanta, so I have that whole energy of I'm a Southern kid in the
Hey,
Northeast.
y'all.
And right, and my roommate came from a New England boarding school, and she had a nervous breakdown 6 weeks into school and left school. And I created this story that if she can't do it, how am I going
Mm.
to do it? And so I just kind of hunkered down and worked really, really hard, way harder than most people should have to work, even at college. And we played hard, but I, I was afraid. And so there was a lot of anxiety that was driving me to be as successful as I was, but the cost came not only with the mental health of anxiety, but with some physical health issues that came about as a result of it. So
Yeah, I mean, the stress. Well, and you mentioned another thing, around diet and ADD and ADHD and just, how we're eating, I think impacts some of these things. I don't think that I was reading some interesting research in the last few months about that ADD and ADHD is something that there are a lot of dietary and environmental components that really impact it, and so you can reduce a lot of it by the changes of like not having glucose or not glucose, I guess. Well, for me,
yeah.
not glucose, but wheat and those sorts of things. But with like dyslexia, it's actually a real wiring issue, is what I had heard. What is your thinking on this
So
idea?
I want to challenge the assumption
Please,
that you
please,
just.
you do it.
Um, here's what I learned in the years of navigating it. ADHD is also a wiring issue. Um, it's not that it's not a neurobiological issue. It is. There are sometimes other environmental factors that can exacerbate the load that we carry. So for some people, it might be gluten or dairy or corn or soy or loud noise or sugar. That doesn't mean that they're causing it. That
Right.
means that there's only so much load our systems can handle. Our nervous systems, especially as children, are somewhat fragile on some level. And there's only so much we can handle. And so I believe that what happens, particularly as our society, we've got so much more chemicals in our society and in our food and in the air and the water. There's this toxic load that our systems can navigate. And so sometimes when you remove something that the system experiences as toxic or unhealthy, it just lightens the load so that you can begin to navigate what's really there underneath. So for one of my kids, when we took them off of gluten, it released the intensity of the anxiety. It didn't go away, but it made it so that we could manage it, we could treat it. My
Mm.
husband, when he took gluten out of his diet, it was like this fog he'd lived in all his life lifted. When that happened, we were then able to help. He was then able to treat his ADHD and depression. So
So
it's not that it's causing it;
right. So a
it's
real clear
aggravating it.
distinction. Yeah, real clear distinction. It's not that it's causing it. It is a wiring issue. It's just impacted by the load that we may be also just intrinsically living in that is impacting us to have less resources for handling it. The fog is there. And so then you've got the ADD and the fog, or the ADHD and the fog. And so by clearing some of it up, it looks like it improves, but it's still there, but then you can treat it.
You can manage it because really what we're talking, it's neurochemical. We're really talking about serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine. Like we're talking about the hormones that help our brain function. And so some of these toxic items hamper that. And when you're hampering a system that's already challenged, if you're struggling and you don't have enough dopamine, then you're already struggling with attention. If you don't have enough serotonin, you're already struggling with emotional regulation. Or if the synapses aren't completing the firing. And so it has to do with optimizing, like part of managing any of these issues, ADHD, autism, anxiety, all of it. Part of it is about kind of optimizing brain health and brain function to improve our brain's capacity to send the messages and receive the messages that need to be sent, and to find the files that are hidden back there somewhere.
Well, and that fits in more alignment than the research with my lived experience, frankly, because I have changed my diet in the last few years and I'm not eating bread. I'm not eating sugar. Like I've really done all the things, trying to be just whole foods. Most of them come out of my garden lately during the summertime, but really trying to be mindful of those sorts of things. And yet that doesn't leave me immune from the fact that I love to do 12 things at the same time and do them poorly. So then I'm like, what am I doing now? And I'm constantly like having to organize myself so that I can like finish this, now finish that. What do you say? Because I mean, you work with a lot of professionals, whether they're doctors or therapists or coaches or educators who work with families that are navigating this landscape. I mean, what sort of advice or things would you put on their radar to pay attention to?
Wow, it's a big question.
Okay, you can
Um,
break it down however you want.
okay, so there are a few things that are coming up. Part of it is that when you're navigating neurodiversity, it's going to show up very differently for everybody. And so the first game is to see, how does it show up for that individual. The reason that I think coaching is such a good modality for people with neurodiversity is that coaching is a process-oriented approach to problem solving. And we kind of identify what the problem is, and then we get curious to see, do we really have the right problem, or do we need to look under it? Is there something else that might really be the real issue we're trying to address? And then we go through a process of figuring out how to address it. In neurodiversity, it's all about process. And so when someone gives someone a solution, because it worked for me, so you should try this, right? You should try
Mm,
this reward chart. You should try this system. You should use this color code. When we give people a solution that works for us, it worked for us, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for them. But if we bring them through a process of problem solving for themselves, then they're going to come up with a solution that works for them. And
mhm.
it's typically not likely to be the solution you would have suggested. And I mean, I see that with my kids all the time. And again, they're now young adults. And I can see what I think they should do. But if I get out of the way and I support them in figuring out what they think they should do, they're going to find the path in a way that really works for them, that feels aligned for them, and that empowers them to have a sense of ownership of it. If I try to do it for them, they're going to yeah me, and then they're going to go do their own thing anyway. So,
Excuse the quick interruption, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that you were invited to my monthly coaches Q&A. It happens every third Monday of the month, and we talk about all things coaching. We talk about coaching demos, we talk about competencies, we talk about what to do with resistant clients, we talk about all sorts of things. Plus, we have an added networking event at the end of it. So you are invited to join this community. I would love to see you there. And on that note, let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. Well, and I love that you brought that up because I remember talking to somebody one time who'd gone through a 12-step program and they were like, if you want what I have, you need to do what I do. And I was just like, wait a minute. One, that what hubris, and two, the idea of there's one right way to do stuff. And I think, to your point, if you want the person to have agency and a sense of ownership and be empowered to be motivated to do these things, yeah, sure, offer some suggestions, maybe, but really that process of being curious with them about what options they'd even be willing to try means that anything they come up with is coming from that space of, hey, this is my idea. And I don't know about you, maybe I think it's maybe more redheaded Irish Leo in me, but I tend to back, like, don't tell me what to do. And so I think that that's a pretty common response for kids also. Like, I think we need to teach them how to think their way through testing things, see what works, see what
Question.
doesn't. Yeah, question things.
Experimenter's mind. But here's the other thing I would say. So one of my kids is in medical school. Okay, and when I was supporting her in studying for the MCATs before she got into med school, and she's dyslexic, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things I relearned was Erickson psychology and the stages of learning. And part of what I got really clear on, which happens with kids, is that when we tell people something, they're going to vote on that information. Do I agree with it or not? It's external to them and they get to decide, do I like it or not? This is what
Mm-hmm.
we see that's happening now that we have this media system where nobody has a sense of an established media. Everybody's voting on everybody else. If it's external to us, we vote. If it's internal to us, we own. Now it belongs to me. It's insight. It's no longer information. It shifts from information to insight. So if I tell my kid, you really should go, do some cover letters, they're going to go, yeah, 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 mom. But if I
External
ask
to me,
them,
voting whether or
it's
not I need to or not.
right. But if I ask a question like, um, have you thought about, or have you had any experience with cover letters, or have you had any success with, or have any of your friends, if I ask any kind of question that raises it for them, then he's going to listen to that and go, no, but I might be curious about that, or no, I've tried that, and that, like, it doesn't matter what the answer is. What matters is that they now have an insight for themselves that
Mm-hmm.
you could never have given them because
Yes.
they're not voting. Once you become aware of something, you can't unaware it. It's
Well,
like
you
once
can,
you
but it
got it,
takes
it's yours.
time and it's yours, to your point.
It's yours.
I mean, once we know something and we've come up with something and it's important to us, it's stickier. And I mean, your point is just so in alignment with coaching also, which is that's why we don't call ourselves advisors, because we're not advising, we're coaching to draw out through curiosity the thinkers what is important to them. And once you find the things that are important to you, it's amazing. You do what needs to be done in order to make it happen. I think you and I are good evidence of that, right? That
Very
we
often.
maybe through our own different mechanisms, but we found a way to persevere through what were conceivably pretty difficult times and challenges that had to be overcome. And I think this really sort of takes me also into, we sort of talked a little bit earlier about this kind of like, if you only tried a little harder, you have such potential. But I don't know. I have found that in my life, one of the things that I've discovered is how much, regardless of its wiring, I love my brain, because my brain sees things in ways that, like, just a typical person isn't going to necessarily think in the same sort of weird way that my brain works. And so I've actually come to a place in my life where I love that my brain is the way that it is. And I don't know, I mean, that would be a hope for me, for anybody that has any sort of neuroatypical wiring, is that they learn to love their brain, because I think the creativity and the way of thinking things through that's not common makes that a magical brain. But I mean, you work with so many people. What do you see?
But I love what you're speaking to is that which is very common in people with ADHD is an ability to see different things and to make connections that other people may not make. And and not everybody with ADHD has that, but a lot of people with ADHD do. And I agree with you. Like I wouldn't trade it for the world because I think I think it's fascinating, and I gravitate towards people with ADHD because I think they're fascinating, and some of the most interesting people I know. They think out outside the box, but beyond that, it's like, okay, I know I could put a round peg into a round hole, but what would happen if I put a quarter size triangle and a this like you get this creativity and this imagination in the way that you make linkages. I think a lot of people with ADHD do that. I think is really interesting. The catch to ADHD and any kind of neurodiversity really is to understand yourself well enough to want to manage yourself and to then know what it takes to manage yourself. So, like to your point, you got to know what it is you want to do. You got to know why you want to do it. You got to know why, your motivation, right? You actually, one of the missing links, I think, in this realm that people, a lot of people who are helping people in this realm miss is you actually have to set the intention and decide to do what you intend to do, like, or what you're motivated to do. I can join a gym all day long, but if I don't decide to actually use the gym, I'm not going to use the gym.
Right. I'll
So,
just pay for the membership for a year and be
a
like,
year,
why did
which
I do
none
that?
of us have ever done, right?
Never. I have
So,
never done that, Elaine.
so there's this clarity, there's this motivation. Intention, I think, is an unsung hero in this space. Then we have to figure out what's the obstacle I need to overcome to be successful with that. How can I set myself up for success? Right? If I'm going to use the gym analogy, I might need a workout partner. I might need a trainer. I definitely need to get it on my calendar. Like, like I need to set myself up for success. So I need to know what the obstacles are. And then I got to put some systems in place or attach a system to it. And so with navigating neurodiversity, I don't think we really understand. I think a lot of neurotypical people probably do this naturally, and I think we need to do it consciously. And that's this notion of connecting the task to the motivation and the intention, and then attaching a system to it to set ourselves up for success.
And it's really interesting as you're talking about it because I'm seeing how honestly, in many ways, I just sort of have learned how to kind of do that for myself. I think I could
Right.
be better. Um, so we may be talking after this, but I do think that intentionality is so important. And then to your point, what are the obstacles that are going to get in the way so that I can actually do the thing I say is important to me to do? And I'm thinking back to going to the gym. There was a time in my life where I went like every morning, 5:30 in the morning, I was at the gym. Those days are gone at this point. But there was things that were like the motivating factors that got me there. And some
Mhm.
of it was feeling good, but that honestly wasn't enough. I met a friend, so I had an accountability to being there. And I think there was also a time where I was paying for some physical, like I had gotten a PT or whatever, not physical therapy, but like a trainer to help me
Trainer.
with some stuff for my neck. And as a result of that, I had this accountability again. And I think for me, accountability has been one of the biggest motivating factors that I have. If I owe you something, all of a sudden I'm much more committed to it than if I just owe it to myself.
I think that's true for a lot of people, and you got to be careful of the shame spiral
Yeah.
because for some of us, especially like I don't know where you are. I'm an Enneagram 2. I'm all about giving to other, right? So for people who are really helpers, or like my connection to other is going to be a really important motivator for me.
Hmm.
But not everybody's going to be motivated by that. So to your
Right.
point, You have to find your motivation,
Yeah.
and it's going to depend on circumstances and everything else. But without it, it's really kind of hard to get anything done. If you're not really clear what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, it makes it a lot harder to do it.
And you don't need to be neurospicy to have that problem. That's just like the human
But
condition.
some people, Lyssa, have what Diane and I call a just get it done button. Some people, you remember
I'm
those
married to one of those.
do it buttons? Like
Yeah.
some people, they can just put it on their list and I'm going to do it because it's on my list. Neurospicy people typically, well, except for maybe on the autism and anxiety spectrum, but typically, like if you're dealing with ADHD, you're not doing it because you should or because it's expected of you, or like you have to really find your motivation for it. And we teach an acronym called pinch. So the things that typically motivate us are play, and in that realm I would add creativity and humor go in there. I is interest, N is novelty, C is competition or connection, right? Collaboration. And then H is hurry up or urgency. What
Mm.
happens in a lot of people with ADHD, the urgency is actually relying on a different part of the brain. So it's using the primitive brain to get cortisol going so that we can get activated. And it's a strategy that many, many people use as adults to get stuff done. When we overuse it,
Yeah.
we end up in a constant stress cycle, and we end up with hypertension and heart disease and all kinds of illnesses because we're overusing stress hormones to
Mm-hmm.
get ourselves activated. So it's not that it's a bad strategy. We just don't want it to be the only motivation.
Right.
We want to balance that hurry up urgency, that last minute tendency, which
Yeah.
sometimes is
The
what's going to get you,
cramming. Right. The cramming.
right? But you want to balance it with play, interest, novelty, and connection.
I love the pinch.
It's
I mean
nice.
it. Yeah, that's really it's super succinct. So the thing that got me calling out to you, Elaine, come be on my podcast, was I had heard you talking and you talked about neurospicy. Where did this terminology, like what was your thinking as this was coming up? Because I have to tell you, it was the thing that I was just like, I love that. Like, yes, I'm neurospicy. And so I just
I don't even know. I can't tell you if I made it up or somebody else made it up. I started using it. And then I started getting people saying, I don't want to be nourished spicy. And some people on the autism spectrum don't like spicy food. I'm like, I
oh
don't think that's the point. That's not. Um, but I don't know. I really honestly don't remember when or how I started using it. It just felt, for many, many years, I was avoiding using the term neurodivergent because I felt like it's pejorative and it has this negative energy and connotation around it. And part of what I've been about for this, for 20 years is finding the strength and holding it lightly. And when I work with parents of complex kids, we're dealing with very heavy stuff, and we're trying to hold it lightly and still laugh and play our way through it, because that's the path to navigating it, really. And so I think I lost the thread, but ultimately I think we have to hold things lightly. And I wanted, when I started using neurodiversity in the last couple of years, because it's become kind of a hot topic and a hot button issue.
Mhm.
But Neurospicy kind of gave me permission to remind us all that this is just, it's all part of it and it's okay. And there's nothing broken here. One of the reasons I love coaching as a modality for supporting people with neurodiversity is that in coaching, we're not broken. Nothing's broken that needs to be fixed. Here's where
Right.
we are. Where do we want to go? How are we going to get there? And, for those of us with neurodiversity, we need a lot more of that,
Yeah.
because the world gives us a lot of negative messages, a
Yeah.
lot more negative messages than positive messages. And so we need to balance that with the lightness.
Well, and I will say to all the listeners, you don't have to call yourself anything you don't want to, but I'm going to call myself neurospicy because I think it hits a funny bone for me. And to your point, that bit of humor is so important for
Yeah.
me to just not take any of it too seriously. And just to your point, also, where do I want to go and how do I want to get there? And I know for me, it's going to involve laughter. So being silly and goofy is all a part of it. It also makes me think, like with the exercise thing, just a real aside. I got a hula hoop a couple of years ago, but I took it out of the garage and put it in my living room. And I've been hula hooping, try to do it every single day now. And it's been hilarious because it brings back that kind of childhood fun where you didn't really have any cares. And all I'm doing in that moment is focusing on hula hooping. And so I'm kind of doing, I think it's actually probably really useful for like my wiring because I'm giving myself those moments of mindfulness because I
Well, and
can't
not only
multitask
mindfulness,
while I'm hula hooping.
but you're also doing a cross
Yeah,
body
the bilateral
break.
stimulation with my
Yep.
legs and hips and arms. Cause I mean, I was, it's a whole thing.
Picture of you hula hooping. I think it's
I
great.
think we have a video coming out on LinkedIn at some point of me doing it. And I'm up to like about 10 minutes straight at this point, too. So
Amazing.
I'm telling you, it has been hilarious and fun. And it's something that I can do every day. And the only purpose for me is that it is entertaining.
That's
Right.
great.
And the byproduct is all the other stuff. Right.
Yeah.
But not because I have to. I don't have to go to the gym. And it's also, and I think kind of to your earlier point also, I think
Hmm.
having people that you owe things to for whatever that is, like am responsible for getting something to you. So I'm going to give it more, I'm going to get it done because I said I would. I think there's also that need to have those things that we're doing purely and solely for ourselves, for the sheer enjoyment of it, whatever that is. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be hula hooping, although I will have an Amazon link below for hula hoop. No, I'm joking.
I think it's great. No, I
um,
agree with you. I think, whatever it is that we can find that gives our brain a break from all the thinking and processing and the nervous system overstimulation that we're dealing with these days. For me, this year I discovered pottery classes. That's my
yes.
thing. And what I love about it is not that I'm any good at it. I have finally let go of caring too much about how good I am, although I'd like it to go out. Um, but it's not about that. I realized it's the only time of the week that I'm not kind of thinking about things.
Yeah.
And I need that, right? I'm
Yeah.
not anxious about things in the world we're in, and I need that.
Yeah.
So,
No,
yeah, I
that's
agree.
absolutely the truth.
Yeah.
And it really, and I mean, and it could be anything. It could be gardening. I love art also. I've been doing some encaustic work and I just love it because when you're doing whatever it is you're doing, if it's something you can just really get into that flow state with, I mean, I don't know what's happening with my beta, delta, and alpha waves, but I can tell you it feels like they're mellowing the heck out. And so,
Can I tell you a funny story that you just made?
yeah.
Last summer, I guess, 2024, I was speaking at the Positive Psychology Conference, the European Congress, so in Europe. And I discovered some amazing things at this Positive Psychology Conference. David and I both went, had a great time, found a whole new fabulous community, the Positive Psychology community. I was surprised to find out that very few of them were psychologists, not maybe not few, but about half, and that there were a ton of coaches, and that positive psychology was doing all the research on coaching, just amazing research. I don't know what you know about positive psychology, but they talk a lot about flow state. What I discovered, Lyssa, is that they're not controlling for ADHD. So they're talking about flow without controlling for neurodiversity, which just boggles my mind because like the whole thing about flow state in the neurodiverse space is that that's kind of what hyperfocus is. That's what we do. And so if you don't pull that out, then how do you really know what flow is?
I wonder if there, I mean, it makes me sort of wonder if there aren't different because there's the state of intense like focus, right?
Hyper.
There's that kind of flow state, I would say. But I think there's also a different flow state that's much more of that mindful, mind body integrated, not thinking. It's sort of like on the wheel. I don't know if you're doing pottery on a wheel or if you're building, but I mean, you can't. I mean, I guess you could be thinking about your taxes while you're trying to get a vase to come up or a cup to come up or whatever it is that you're doing on the wheel. But I mean, there's a lot of micro movements that have to happen in a hand and tactile sensing and things that have to happen that if you're off somewhere else thinking about something like your grocery list, you're probably not present enough to do that,
Yeah.
whatever that is. So I think and there's a huge difference in my mind between that kind of flow state and the flow state I get into when I'm writing a research paper,
Mm.
right? Where I'm really hyper focused on it because I'm reading all the research and I'm like, right? I'm a 5 on the Enneagram, just so you know,
Right.
but
Got that.
I'm
Just
an
now.
extroverted one now, but I mean, it's like that's a different brain state. That's a much more activated flow state, whereas the other is like hula hooping. There's no like high intensity thinking going on. That's just
No, I
like,
can
can I
imagine.
keep it going? Can I keep it going? Can I keep it going? Kind of thing. And that's about all I can think about at that moment. This is,
I thought
I'm
about whether
loving this. Go
coaching
ahead.
is a subset or mindfulness is a subset of coaching.
Say the question. What was, say that again one more time?
I have this conversation I've had with a colleague who's a mindfulness expert for many years about the relationship between coaching and mindfulness, and which he sees as completely separate. And but I think it's because he doesn't really understand coaching. And I believe that there's a link that part of what coaching does is it invites people to be in a state of or a place of mindfulness for themselves. It raises awareness, and sometimes it's cognitive, and sometimes it's other than that.
You know, I like that, and I don't know if I'd limit it just to like coaching and mindfulness. I think there's probably a lot of ways to get to it. I do think though, because people often come, and I speak as a therapist, well, a recovering therapist, but people can come to the therapy expecting you're going to solve this problem, you're going to fix me. And I think you even mentioned that earlier. And I've often used that description of therapy is really from the sort of broken to functional, right? And then coaching is really functional to thriving. But I think mindfulness in my mind, and I'm no expert on it just for myself, but is that ability to just quiet my brain. And that for me is like a vacation. Like I don't need to leave home. If I can do that for 10 minutes a day or whatever every single day, that seems to be a good recharge for being able to do a lot of other things. After
Mm.
this conversation, I do think there's a few structures I could be implementing, but um, but I do think that letting our brain be quiet. And honestly, if it was
Right.
just about therapy or just about Buddhism or just about prayer, because I mean, they've done the studies and we can see the brain relaxes under a number of different mechanisms. So I
Yeah.
think it's more finding the one that really resonates with you, kind of going back to our earlier conversation, instead of me prescribing like, hey, you should hula hoop. Like what does it do? What is it that does that for you that gets you into that space? I think is
Right.
probably, yeah. And that could be coaching. I know for me, I just love working with people through the coaching modality, but it goes more back to what you were talking about before, which is I'm not telling anybody what to do, but rather using curiosity to invite. ideas from the other person, which I think is so important to agency. And I think we have so little in our life that anywhere we can have more autonomy and agency in the way that we're thinking about things and the way we're choosing things is just like, yeah, more of that.
Right. Well, and that is, I think, at the end of the day, exactly why we do what we do at Impact, because what we figured out is that coaching is a really beautiful modality for people with neurodiversity because it's empowering. So the secret to what we do is we actually teach neuro-informed coaching skills to parents. I'm not training them to be coaches, but if you bring some coaching skills, if you teach parents curiosity, if you teach parents to be an invitation to their kids, if you teach this notion of what is agency and how do you empower someone else's agency, and you give them skills to do that, then you're strengthening the relationship and fostering a sense of independence and agency all at the same time. And so it's a beautiful skill set, I think, as we move into the modern world where notions of authority have shifted and nervous systems are taxed. The coaching modality is going to blend into every industry in a lot of ways. Um, Not peer coaching, but the coaching tool set,
Right.
because it is fundamentally collaborative. And and that is what the world is calling for, I believe.
I believe too. I do. What do you, what on your own journey through this life that you've had has most surprised you as its relevance to what you find yourself doing today?
Um, wow. I am shocked by what I find myself doing today. Like I um I didn't set out to do this. I I do feel like it was a calling for me. And I don't think I didn't set out to innovate a new modality, but I think I did because I think neuro-informed coaching is a new framework. It's for coaching. That's really powerful and really effective. But I didn't. That's not. That wasn't what I was about. I just wanted. I knew I wanted to. I said to you earlier, I'm a see a need, fill a need kind of a person,
Hmm.
and I saw this huge need, and now I see an even huger need than I even saw originally. In this need for neuro, and I believe the future is neuro informed, and what we're about that we don't even know is really moving the world forward to understand and embrace that. And so I think I'm constantly surprised by the journey I've taken because it wasn't intentional. And I used to think that I fell backwards haphazardly into things. But now I believe I spiral forward haphazardly, um, because I'm really about looking for those connections we talked about earlier. I'm looking for the connections and the gaps and finding ways to fill them. And I don't know anything else but to do that.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things I would do differently if I were doing it again. I did not know I was going to become an entrepreneur and a CEO. Right? I thought I was becoming a coach, and so that whole role of what it means to build a business. We call ourselves a private sector business for the public good. So we're not
Mm.
enough because we didn't want to. I didn't want to spend my life asking people for money. But we operate like one. So we use fee-based services to pay for everything we do for free. And so it's complicated, and it's become this kind of, global entity. I did not expect to be doing this.
Hmm.
And I am, for the record, looking for the next generation who wants to come in and keep doing this because it's a beautiful work in the world and it makes such an extraordinary difference. I can't imagine it stopping when we stop.
Yeah.
But I did not I didn't plan this. My first job I did a fellowship out of college. My first job after that, I was a social worker. And I became a coach because I wanted to work with parents or individuals or women. What I didn't understand about myself was that one-to-one need is really important for me. And so is that global need to see systemic change. And really, you said it in the introduction, and I really appreciate it. I really feel acknowledged by it, that there's a social movement component to what we're about that I've always been about. Like my research in college was about social movements. Um, I just didn't know that that's what I was going to do, if that makes sense.
It
And that's
totally
been a
does.
huge surprise to me in my life.
I love that. And I mean, how cool is that also?
It's kind of cool.
It's kind of cool.
It is. I don't say this often, but so we have just found out that we're going to be receiving a Hall of Fame award with CHAD, which is Children and Adults with ADHD, which is the nonprofit I've been supporting involved with and on the board of and all this stuff for 15 years.
Wow.
And it feels like, and it's happening on the 15th anniversary of Diane and my meeting at this conference when we were just starting out. And so it just feels very full circle
Yeah.
and
Kismet.
very complete and kismet and all of that. Um, and yeah, it's really cool. Like, it's really amazing to look back and go, okay, we have really impacted millions of people and with coaching. And I love that. And I certainly didn't think I was going to do that.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I think it's also an interesting testament to perseverance in doing what it is you're called to do and that you're passionate about. And when you do it long enough, like you make impact, and not everybody's going to make, millions of people of impact, but gosh, you're going to make impact no matter who
You
you are
are.
if you do it long enough.
Well, and it's like that whole pebble in the water thing. Whatever
Yeah.
you do, and I think that's David calls it being an impact billionaire. That's my goal, is to impact a billion souls, right? And
Nice.
there's that notion of paying it forward, spreading it out. Like when I do the work I do for parents or for professionals, that has this cascading impact.
Yeah.
Right. So for a parent, they're breaking the cycle in their family and they're empowering their kids to see themselves differently. And that's going to change how they go forward into the world. And the same is true for every professional who, when you can introduce a therapist to a coach approach or to a teacher to a coach approach and the
Or
cascading
parent.
impact of
Yeah.
that, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Right. And so to me, we're all here for whatever time we're here for, and we're going to leave a wake. I guess the question is, what kind of wake do we want to leave? Um, and I feel really good about the continuation of the wake
Yeah.
the wave we've been able to start.
It's beautiful. I have a tradition on this show that is I ask a previous guest to leave a question for a future guest, and so I have a question for you that did not come from me, but is for you. What gives you hope?
That is a beautiful question. Um, I don't think we could do this work without being hopeful, to be honest. I think I am fundamentally optimistic and hopeful. I believe fundamentally in the graciousness and the generosity of humanity. And despite everything that's going on in the world right now, and I think we're experiencing a significant backlash to that, because I think there are people who are very motivated by fear. And so I think there's a lot of fear. I think we're in a world that is really kind of fear versus hope. despair versus hope. And I think what brings me, I don't even think it brings me hope. Like I dwell in hope.
Hmm.
and and I hold on to hope, and I believe, I know for certain that what kids need today more than anything is for adults in their lives to hold hope. I had this beautiful opportunity based on this conference I went to last summer. I met this guy who's one of the leading world researchers on hope. He's a futurist, a guy named Andreas Kraft. And I interviewed him on my podcast. And what he talked about, and when he talked about at the conference, with all of this global research on hope, was what it really came down to was how important it is for people to feel like they're moving forward towards something. If people feel like the world is coming at them, they don't have hope. If they feel like they're moving forward towards and have the capacity to influence, they feel hopeful. And I believe fundamentally that's what coaching does, is it gives people a sense of moving forward from a place of hope and belief in themselves.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here in the studio today. I've so enjoyed this conversation.
Me as well. Thank you for having me.